Hello, welcome to my channel. Today a new episode on surface modeling. What I want to do today is go through how I build my model and also show you how to go from a surface to a solid body, and I want to do it in a little bit more detail. The last few videos I haven't been talking about all the steps that I take, so today I want to go in detail into the steps that I take. First off, what I do is I have the wheelbase of the car and I know the rim diameter or the tire size basically. And the next step is that when I draw in my tire size, I keep in mind that the tire will sink into the pavement a little bit due to compression basically. So the actual tire or the center of the wheel will be a little bit lower than if you would draw it onto the tire meeting the surface exactly. And based on that, I start with my wheel arch line. Now for this, as I showed in the beginning, today we are going to be working on the hot rod, and we're going to make the front wheel arch and the rear wheel arch. And what I will be doing today is that I have this little coupe hot rod, and I also have this little panel van that I really like. So I'm going to design the front wheel arch and the rear wheel arch and the nose. And based on that, I will go into the rear of the car and the roofline of the car based on to the model that I want to use. So either the little coupe or the panel van. So just like with modeling bodies, you can also use a loft. So the first thing that I do is I take a sketch from the design that I want for the line of the wheel arch. And then what I'm going to do is I am making a sketch on the front plane, and based on that sketch I'm gonna I let the software combine those two sketches. So I have a flat sketch on a surface, and I have a sketch on another surface that tells the first sketch how I want to have it in 3D space. So the flat sketch will actually become a curved three-dimensional sketch, and that one will give me the curvature of the wheel arch, so that the bottom of the tire will stick out of the wheel arch, but the top of the tire will actually fall inside of that wheel arch. And using that sketch and a surface loft, I generate the wheel arch, the straight part on the wheel arch, and this basically helps a fiberglass part to become very stiff and rigid, and also keeps the shape very well. And then we go over to the rest of the wheel arch, where we will have a nice curve and some bend. And what's important with this kind of wheel arch is that the suspension arms need to fit underneath these curves. And on the outside, that's not really a big issue because the fender flares on the outside are very big, but towards the inside they are much smaller, and there it will be difficult. What I try to do with this model, to keep it simple, is work with planes. So you saw me do the first surface loft, and then I made a plane on which I could make a new line and work towards that plane. And what you do for surface modeling is you have your curve or your sketches that are basically for the shape of something. So how round do you want something to be? And the other ones are guidelines. Now the difference between the two is that a guideline can go past the actual shape that you want, but the sketches that you actually need, they need to be very exact and they need to touch. So that's why you'll see me use the pierce function. So I tap the line and I tap an anchor point and say pierce. What that means is that if you look at a front plane, it might appear that you go through a sketch line. However, if you then rotate your view, where you look a little bit 3D from the front, you might see that you're completely missing the line that you thought you were hitting, and therefore you use the tool pierce. If you do that, then all the lines are connected, and you can use the sketch lines for the shape and the guidelines to make your shape that you want. Very often it is required that you work with 3D sketches. First thing, if you made a 3D sketch, click somewhere in your screen, because if you don't and you want to start a new one, you continue in your previous sketch, and this is very annoying. It still happens a lot, and when you want to make a surface out of sketches, it'll say, hey, this won't work because these sketches are in one tool. Sometimes SolidWorks will give you the option of selecting a specific sketch or sketch line. However, sometimes it doesn't, and then you need to take that one sketch that you need out of a 3D sketch with several combined lines. Another thing is that there is this button to copy a line. So for example, if you made a design for a certain line, it might be that if you want to make a surface out of it, that it says that that line consists of 3 or 4 parts. And again, sometimes it gives you the option to select those 3 lines, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it does, or when it doesn't, that's quite annoying. So what you then do is you make a new sketch and you say copy these lines and make it into a single sketch. And when that sketch is done, you close it off and you can use it. You'll see me do that several times. In the end, it's very important that you work very neatly and very precise. And that's not always what you want when you work with surfaces. When you work with surfaces, you want to basically sometimes you really want to be free and do what you want, but especially if you go into detail engineering with a surface model for a car, for example, you have to work around a chassis or a suspension arm, or you have to work around a crash zone or a seat or whatever, and you have to work very accurately with dimensions, etc. So whichever way you do, work very precise, work very accurate, and the more you work with dimensions and the accurate you are, the better the results will be, and the easier it is to basically have a good chance of the surface model being able to convert to a solid body. Now, why would you want to convert a part or a surface to a solid body? Well, a surface is basically nothing and you cannot do anything with it, and if you make it into a solid body, you can maybe 3D print it, or you can do something with it. So if you want to do something with your surface model, so for example you want to make a mold out of it, you need to go into solid bodies. One of the big things that will go wrong a lot is that you get these weird angles and you cannot find your way out of it except for a triangle. A triangle you cannot do in SolidWorks with surfaces. It doesn't understand triangles. So what you either need to do, and you saw me do that at the front with the wheel arch, is that you make a square that extends past what you want and then cut it back and then say that's it. If you do it like that, it's fine. So that's option 1. Option 1 is just make the plane bigger or the surface bigger and then trim it back to whatever shape you need. That's option 1. Option 2 is that you use the fill feature. And what that does is that you, when you have a triangle shaped surface hole, basically, within several surfaces that come together and leave that triangle shape left open, you select all the edges surrounding that triangle, and then you say fill surface, and generally it will do that. Very often, however, you'll get a very big spike in the surface where it either dips down or dips up, or and then you need to fiddle around with how the surface connects to other surface, if it's tangent, for example, and it's just trying. Another thing that you often see if you try to go to solid bodies, if you select one or two and then knit them together and make them into a thick part, a body, it'll work. But if you select everything, somewhere something goes wrong. And it's very frustrating, it's very difficult, and it's not an exact science. There are some things to look out for, as I just mentioned, but in general it's just trial and error, and try to work as nice as possible. Try to ensure that you have open shapes. Try always to have curves that you make in a certain direction, so either horizontal, vertical, or if you have a 3D sketch in the X, Y, Z direction, but try to have curves that are open and not cross into each other, for example. And also what sometimes happens is that you make a surface and that it doesn't understand really what it's supposed to do, and then it bows out at a certain point, and it's very difficult to see sometimes, but when it happens, that's where the surface will fail. So to make this solid body, you just go to knit surfaces, and when that opens, you select by just swiping over the screen your entire model, and don't forget to think or check the merge button, and just say okay. In theory, there shouldn't be anything wrong with this. If something goes wrong with this part, then your model is basically not very well made, most likely, because it means you have gaps. So in theory, nothing should go wrong here. Then you select thickening, and just say if you want to have it outside or inside, or a combined thickening, and select the thickness that you want, and just click and pray on OK, and if it works, fine, you did a good job, and if it doesn't, too bad. Then the only thing that you can do is look if you can see something obvious. Second thing you can do is just click one or two surfaces that you think are very well, and try again to thicken those two, for example, and then add some and try to thicken them again, and add another few, thicken them again, and as soon as you start hitting an issue, then that's most likely your issue. And sometimes it's very clear, and sometimes it's absolutely not. So that's SolidWorks for you regarding surface modeling. I mean, as you can see from my designs that I make, it is possible to do something cool with SolidWorks, but it is quite difficult, and it takes a lot of trial and a lot of error to get a few steps ahead. And in general, that's not a bad thing. If you are designing a car, it'll take you 3, 4, 5 steps to really get the shape that you want, especially with what I'm doing, where you have to look at regulations, for example. Your light might not be high enough, or it might not be far enough to the outside, or whatever, so you need to redesign, or you might have your hips too thick and the seats won't fit, so you have to make the interior space wider and still keep the look you're going for. So it's a back and forth several times, and with that back and forth you also learn more and more how to model that what you want. And furthermore, it might be needed that you model a certain body line in it. For example, to say, okay, this is the hood, this is the door, this is the front fender, this is the front bumper, etc. I hope I've shown you now what I do. I hope I've shown you some of the buttons, and I hope this is somewhat clearer. And please let me know if you have any questions. Again, for me it's just as big of a trial as it will most likely be for you. On this occasion everything worked at once, everything was perfect. It's one of the first times that ever happened to me. So it might look very cool and very perfect in this one, but I can guarantee you it's most of the time never like this. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing, and see you on the next episode. Bye bye.
Ain't seen nothing yet.